In Daniel chapter 2, we have one of several analogies with regard to prophecy. And this, of course, is called Nebuchadnezzar's image. And we're going to take it plus several others in the scripture, and we're going to look at some economic analogies from these prophetic symbols. Now, actually, it has to do with the message or the study that we've had on keeping the faith. But in the past few weeks and even days, I've had folks that have indeed faced uncertain futures. And the job market out there doesn't look good for a whole lot of folks. Now, one of the reasons for this is because we are living in the last days. I realize that all of us from time to time have worked here and there, and of course have been untreated or treated rather unfairly by those either that we've worked with or the system. Of course, system testing and people testing are all part of God's program. We have to answer it with Bible doctrine. Now, before, things were a little different in the world and in the United States of America with regard to a job market. But things are fast changing. We're all being affected in one way or another by what's called a global economy and preparing people for a global economy. That's why if we were to look around this room, there are those in a profession, say in the beauty business. And of course, you have OSHA there. You've got to watch your chemicals. You've got to watch your disposal. You've got to watch the climate in the so-called salon. In the education business, the way kids are taught now, it's not to do the best they can and get the best grade that they can. It's to make sure that all the students feel good. And if somebody fails, of course, you don't want to hurt their feelings. So we're no longer looking for academic achievement. Well, that's all part of this world mentality, global mentality. If you are the manager of a store, one of those mart stores, you are influenced by this global mentality with a universal product code. And now with the advance of computers, so that pretty much around the world in just a few seconds time, it seems, you can have that person's financial history before you, at least how they've dealt with a credit card or with your store before. All of these things are factors. And of course, no longer does a person stay in one place. People now, because of this, are being moved thither and yon because of the downsizing, downscaling of businesses, and you have to move here, move there to get a job. Now, what's happening? You look at the stock market, and it is getting rave reviews, and that it's nothing has been higher with regard to its history ever. And yet we find all of these things still happening. Well, in Bible prophecy, we have pictures that let us know that as we are facing the last days of grace into the dispensation of law and the tribulation period, we are going to have financial troubles. We're going to have a whole lot of people out there that are affected by the policies of a group of men. Those men are called the Illuminati, and you probably heard of them. If you're familiar with the Shriners, if you're familiar with the Masonic Lodge, if you're familiar with the Trilateral Commission, if you're familiar with the United Nations and so forth, then you should be familiar with a group called the Illuminati, though they stay in the background. But actually, this group of men controls the purse strings of the world. so that we can't see them to give them a good swift kick or a punch in the nose, but at the same time, they can buy and sell and manipulate the economies of the nations of the world. And they're doing it now because all of them are New Agers, all of them are environmentalists, all of them are globalists, all of them want a one world government, which of course they are in back of and benefiting. They could care less if we suffer without a job, suffer without work. If a community fails, they could care less if a Grace Church would fail. What do they care? They're out for Mother Earth. They're not out for Father God. And this, of course, is seen in these images. Now, we know that as we've studied the image of Nebuchadnezzar before, that it goes from a head of gold to feet of clay. Now, what is the first obvious point with regard to this? Well, it goes from that which is supremely valuable to that which is, excuse the phrase, dirt cheap. From something that is precious to something that is common. And that's why it says in verse number 41, "For whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom's going to be divided. As you saw the iron mix," last part of verse 41, "with miry clay. The toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. Whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave to one another, even as iron is not mixed with clay." So the image, of course, goes from the head down to the feet, and it ends up with the toes. Now, of course, the number 10 is the predominant number because in this image, those 10 toes represent 10 kings or nations. And those 10 kings and nations are going to have a philosophy. The philosophy is there are going to be people in leadership positions that are going to rule with a rod of iron. After all, you have to remember that when Jesus Christ comes back to establish his kingdom, how does he rule? With a rod of iron. However, they do capitulate to people in that they make the people think that they are pleasing them, that they are important to them, and so forth in a measure. And there's where you have your clay. Actually, it will become a social democracy. But here is the picture that you have today between your corporations. And that is what's happening. Our corporations right here in Evansville are being affected by the global mentality. I've been out and about and so forth and in restaurants and the like, and just even recently where I've run into people, and what are you doing here? We're having a global meeting. People from Europe, people from Japan are here. Right up the road, what are we doing? We are building a Toyota plant. Well, those are the Japanese right here in the United States of America. General Electric out there. You cannot do something without having a plant somewhere in the world other than in the United States of America affected, whether it's medicine and the like. Well, that is a global mentality and so forth, and that is a weakness in the system, because God's system is actually nationalism. God's system is where you keep nations strong. But just like with the Tower of Babel, we're beginning an admixture of the nations of the world so that we can't hurt the feelings of the Japanese. We can't hurt the feelings of those of Western Europe. Right here in our church, we have one who flies to Western Europe. Why? Because you cannot do business now unless you do business globally, and that is going to affect it. But because of that, the corporations assume this type of mentality, where the iron is going to rule. The bottom line is going to rule. The money is going to come in because the Illuminati has the strings, and they're the ones that call the shots. But as a result, there is a philosophy toward the worker. Cheap. clay. Who cares? You won't work, someone else will. And we'll get them at lower wages. It is a no-care philosophy, yet all along, and we'll have that here. We have advertisements where this group and that group, they'll say they really care about the people, when all along it is a gimmick and a ploy just to get people to do business with them rather than the person down the street. And that is the mentality that is coming on this planet right now. You are nothing but a piece of dirt to them. And if you don't like the system, then that is fine. They will fire you and get rid of you. Now that's something we all have to understand because it's going to affect us all. Now, even as a pastor of a church, just how many people do you think can get fired or be jobless or be in the process of looking for a job before that begins to affect the local church and the giving in a local church and the power to do things in a community for evangelization? And of course, that is Satan's ultimate goal. If he can make Christians ineffective, I preached a message sometimes back, if the horse gets sick and dies, who'll pull the cart in the harvest? And in the analogy, of course, the cart is that which you put the harvest in and bring it into the barn. But the horse is the local church. It is not in the dispensation of grace. It is not a publications ministry. It is not a home Bible study. It is not a Bible college. It is the local church that is the horse. I remember our own missionary, Don Summers, who wrote a little ditty in the Things to Come paper about, well, if the churches in America fail, we've got 400 churches over in the Philippines. Yeah, and they pay their pastor with a chicken. They've just wrung his neck and a couple of eggs. Yeah, they're really going to evangelize the world. They really have the wherewithal. They're a third world nation themselves. If America falls, and the local churches in America are rendered powerless, ineffective, if the horse gets sick or it ends up dying, who's going to pull the cart in the harvest? There is no harvest. And all of this, of course, is intended to strike at the very heart of local churches and people who believe and want to promote the gospel. So, this mentality is being assumed by corporations. It is ironclad, and seeing the clay there is just a speck of dirt and unimportant. Okay, now, turn with me to chapter 7. The second thing we want to notice with regard to this, it's the number 10, is that those 10 kings, the 10 toes represent 10 kings, but in a specific place in the world, Western Europe. It's the same thing here with this beast, Western Europe, which lets me know something. It's going to be the philosophy of Western Europe. It's going to be the promotion of Western Europe and the downplay of the other nations of the world. It's just like the United States of America. The environmentalists have gotten us to give our industry away to other nations simply because we don't want the smoke. But we do buy the steel from other nations like Japan, where they've got the smoke there and they produce the steel, so we pay them. We put our steel makers, I'm from Pittsburgh, you remember, the coal miners worked on boats, worked on the railroad, and worked in the steel mills, and we put them out of business because we didn't want the smoke, and yet we'll still, what hypocrisy, we'll still buy the steel from Japan and those places that have the industry. So they get the money and we get the clean air. Well, anyway, the beast. Look at what it says with regard to the beast in verse number 7. After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly. It had great iron teeth, and it devoured. One of the features of this is devouring. Now, we're going to see it if you'll note verse number 19. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron and his nails of brass, which devoured and brake in pieces. Note verse number 23. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth. All right, we get the picture here economically. The philosophy of Western Europe, globalism, multiculturalism, but the philosophy economically is to have something ironclad. Now, the mark of the beast is going to be just like this. Ironclad, you have to take the mark of the beast. In so doing, then, we're going to show you how much we care for the people. Of course, they don't tell you that you have to sell your soul to them. You have to sell your soul to the devil to take the mark of the beast and enter this ironclad, fail-safe system where everybody's going to have 2 cars in every garage, a chicken in every pot, and roof over their head, and clothes on their back by taking this system. But see, that's what they're banking on. People would rather have this security than the freedom of just simply trusting in the Lord. That's what the mark of the beast is. There is the issue. Now, the same thing here. These 10 horns, and let's look in verse number 8, or 7, last part of verse 7. It was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. These 10 horns, again, represent, just like the 10 toes, the kings. But in this particular case, here it's on a man, here it's on a beast. And the characteristic of this beast is that he does what? Devours. He keeps on eating up. And eventually, and that's what's happening, I believe, the United States of America, our economic policies are going to fail in favor of the economic policies of Western Europe. Now, how do I know that? Well, let's move quickly, and we'll mention this again, but let's move quickly to the next one in chapter 8. Verse number 23. In other words, the global economic system is going to be brought under the umbrella of 10 nations controlled by the Illuminati, 10 kings, ultimately one king, the little horn that comes up from them, and that is the one who grows more stout than all his fellows, that's the 11th horn here, is going to devour and consume, because eventually all the nations of the world will have to take the mark of the beast, which is the mark of Western Europe initially, in order to buy and sell. They will devour all of the markets. And that's what's happening today. It will happen eventually. Now, how do we know it's going to do this? Verse 23. The latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. It says in Revelation chapter 13 that the dragon gives him his power. The dragon gives power to the beast, and that's who it's talking about here, this king of fierce countenance. Well, what kind of power is he going to have? He shall destroy wonderfully, amazingly, but he shall prosper and practice. He'll destroy the mighty and the holy people. Verse 25, through his policy, he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. You see, that's what's going to happen. That's what the mark of the beast is all about. And that's why our companies are downsizing, and everybody is looking to Western Europe as a large marketplace, a global marketplace. And what they're doing influences seemingly the markets of the world. It intends to devour, and its leaders, especially the one king, shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, while he destroys all the other markets of the world in favor of his policies, the mark of the beast. All right. Let's move from here to the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation, chapter 6. Now, again, you have to understand that the United States of America has been drinking at the well of Western Europe and its culture for a long time. And we are beginning to have that once again affect our lives right here. After all, some would say that's where we come from, and we tend to want to know our roots and go back to our roots. And going back to our roots, our fashions come from Western Europe. The environmental policy comes from Western Europe. We can't move in this world without consulting our NATO allies in Western Europe and so forth. We're having a global economy, and it is being affected in Western Europe. Western Europe now says it wants to get involved in the Middle East peace process. Of course, that's all in keeping with Bible prophecy as well. Now, another thing that's coming up, we believe that we have a short time left in the dispensation of grace. And so therefore, one of the ways that Antichrist is going to get to control people is, of course, through the use of food and work. That's what this is all about. As I know and have known people, and as I know you, I believe that there are many in here who are absolutely hard workers, committed to making the company a profit, not just out for yourself, but there and interested in investing your life in a company which should, by all rights, be there for you when it's your time to be rewarded for hard work. But companies don't care anymore. You're nothing but clay. They're interested only in the bottom line and devouring. And if you cannot continue to feed their appetite, then you're out. It's coming because the world is assuming the policy of the king with a fierce countenance, who can destroy world markets with his genius, and who can cause craft to prosper with his genius. But it's coming down to this, and that is that in Antichrist system, it's going to be more or less one day at a time. Give us this day our daily bread. This is what it's coming to. Verse number 5. He opened the third seal, and he heard a beast say, "Come and see." And he beheld a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. Here is the global mentality. And that is, there is no such thing as you being able to save money, spend your own money, and the like. You've got Big Brother watching you, so that everybody is going to be equal, of course, except for those in leadership. It's like those in Russia who say everything's equal, and they have the socialist republic there, and their leaders always drive those big limousines and have the better suits and the caviar and the champagne, where the person on the street has to wait in lines for hours, only then to get meat that's picked over, if there's any meat at all. Something's wrong with that picture, but then again, that's the way it is. Verse 6, I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat. Now, what is a measure of wheat? A measure of wheat, of course, in the time in which this was written, was 1 day's food. It is what it took to keep one person alive for 1 day. And even then, it was only moderate. You didn't have enough money to go splurge. It was mainly the golden arches and not the river house. And you didn't have money for the river house because you only had 1 day's food. Okay, well, that's fine. How much did I have to work, or will I have to work for this 1 day's food? Note what it says. For a penny. Well, now, we cannot liken this to our penny, our copper penny. It actually is 1 day's wage. That's how much a man would get at the end of his day. It was a minimum wage. So for his minimum wage, he would get 1 day's food. Now, why do it this way? Because you can control people easier this way. You've got to work, you've got to stay in there, and so forth. If you simply reduce their savings, if you don't allow them the means to buy ahead or look ahead or plan ahead with regard to their savings, they've got too much to do day by day just to earn enough to feed themselves for that day. And that's what it's coming to. Have you ever wondered about medical care? What's happening? I mean, almost every month it seems like there is a change in medical care. You got to pay more and you get less. And now they're starting to dictate the terms. In the medical care that I have, I cannot go to the chiropractor anymore and have them pay it without it being referred to by my MD or family physician. Unless he does it, I cannot just show up on the door of my chiropractor and say, I need an adjustment. Now, start with the attitude. Give me an attitude adjustment, then you could get with the rest of me. I cannot do that. Why? Because they're not going to pay for it anymore. Now, where do they get? I'm paying for that. Where do they? But that's the iron in the system. They're going to tell me. I'm not going to tell them. And if I don't like it, hey, don't buy the insurance, as though we all could do that and not live without insurance. But that's what it's coming to. People are going to be controlled through food and medicine and the like. And they're going to end up working a whole day simply for 1 day's food. Now turn with me to chapter 13. Chapter 13. Where it says, verse 14, He deceives them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had a wound by a sword and did live. He had power to give life to the image of the beast, and the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. He causes all, both small and great, this is Revelation 13:16, to receive a mark in their right hands and foreheads, so that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark of the beast. Now, here is the next thing with regard to control. The mechanics of global control of an economy are already in place. It doesn't matter now if you buy eggs from a farmer, right outside of Evansville here, or you buy a car from Japan. Everything has on it now what's called a universal product code. And of course, it's tied right in to the computers, so that you can go back to the very box, the very lot, the very day that the thing was made. It's all in the computer. Everything about that product, when it was made, the resources, how they got it, and so forth, when it was shipped, when it arrived, when it was unloaded, when it was put on the shelves and the like. Everything is based upon this universal product code. It's inescapable. You can't miss your inventory now, per se. But what is going to happen? Already on the television, we're seeing things with regard to credit cards. Have you noticed them? Thumbprints and other things that you simply have the credit card and you show it, and it is an unmistakable way of identifying you. You can't fool the machine. You see, people today are beginning to counterfeit money, say in the United States of America. People today are writing a whole lot of bad checks and the like. And to get around this, What easier way than to have a credit card which can give this clerk here an instantaneous look at your record and identify who you are. And the machine comes back and says, okay, you've got enough to cover this. Have you ever had a credit card, and this because I pay my credit cards off, have you ever had a credit card, though, that you knew didn't have anything in it? I mean, it was down to zip, and you give it to the person, they run it through and say, this credit card's maxed out. The machine won't take it. Oh, man, alive. I don't want to use this dumb thing to begin with. I'd rather pay cash. But, you need a receipt, you're on a trip and the like. It doesn't work. It doesn't have anything in it. It has to work. Could it be your machine rather than my card? I have good credit. Well, anyway, just a little flesh for annoyance that I'd like to tell you about. But now we have a mark on people that absolutely identifies them and takes them right back to you. The money is there. You can buy it. You can have it, and so forth. To buy and sell everything. Of course, what it's getting down to is that people are going to be forced into a situation where, with the mark of the beast, you sell your soul. That's exactly what it is. You have to sell your soul. And it is, if you'll come back to the book of Job, where it says in chapter 2, verse number 4, "And Satan answered the Lord and said, Skin for skin, yea, all that a man has will he give for his life. Put forth your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, and he'll curse you to your face." That is the issue. If he begins to get hunger pains, he's going to sell out and take the mark of the beast. Or we can even make it more personal than that, more intimate than that. If their children begin to suffer hunger pains, if their children have a disease and need medical attention, you can't buy it unless you take the mark. And you can't get a service for them unless you put the mark on them, you see. Now, there's where we are headed toward. It is control of the global economy so that we can control people to bring them to the point at issue. Would I rather starve to death or be headed, or will I join the world in taking the mark of the beast? That's where we're headed, and that's why we're all having problems financially. And that's why the world is tossed to and fro, and we're in such an upheaval. The politicians say everything is doing good, but I don't believe that. I believe we're being lied to. I think things are in change and in flux right now because we're living in the last days. Okay. Let's go for the remaining moments that we have to 2 Thessalonians. Chapter 2. Now you will remember the study that we did on what we call the doctrine of adumbration. Adumbration simply means that there is a foreshadowing of tribulation conditions. And since, in our estimation, we have probably less than 15 years to go if we take the total thing. Sometimes you would wish it was a little shorter, especially when you have to deal with unsaved people. One of the characteristic things of unsaved people in the last days is that they will be covetous. That is, they will be greedy. And it will be seen in corporations, but it will also be seen throughout the whole of society, because commodities are going to become less available. And so we're going to tend to hoard and the like. So, what needs to be done? Well, in keeping with our analogies here, we're living on this side of the rapture. We're closing in on the time, perhaps, when we are going to be caught up. What's going to happen? Number one is the iron clay kingdom is going to be brought into focus, where that philosophy of having the head, whether it's over governments, whether it's over corporations, to have this tight-fisted policy, this rod of iron rule over the clay. And life, as far as those on the lower echelons, lower stratas of finances, they're going to be looked on as they're cheap. Workers are cheap. Why do you think we want to build a road, I-69, to go all the way down to Mexico? Cheap labor. We'll fuss about labor here in the United States of America and sweatshops and the like. And you know what? The people in the United States of America turn right around and buy things from Mexico. Why? Because the products are cheaper. The bottom line is cheap. Some of this, of course, we've brought on ourselves, but some of it also is because of what's happening. All right? Next, the devouring policies of the beast. The beast, of course, is the United Kingdom, the United States of Europe, the European Economic Community, and so forth. And that's what's happening. We're seeing it come together. It's having its own financial policies, its own coins, its own armies, and so forth. And that is being formed right now as we speak. But they're setting up to devour. They're setting up to conquer and conquering and to conquer and the like. It's setting up so that the kings can be in place. Well, let's turn to Revelation chapter 17, then we'll come back to 2 Thessalonians. What's going to happen? The kings have to come in place first, or be in place first, before the little king can come up from amongst them in their midst and grow over the other 10. Verse number 12 in Revelation 17. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, says verse 13, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb. But the point that I am making is that Antichrist is not revealed till after the rapture, but his system, his countries, or the 10 countries formed into one, must be in place so that after the rapture, he can be revealed. He can take over. He can be that little horn that grows up over all the 10 in that geographical vicinity. That has to be a foreshadowing here. Also, that of 1 day's wage for 1 day's food. And of course, we all hate to see it because there is suffering involved in that for all of us. But these are the times we're living in. Turn back to 2 Thessalonians. Now, verse number 3. Let no man deceive you by any means. For that day, meaning the day of the Lord, shall not come except. All right, we're going to stop there and go down to verse number 7. For the mystery of iniquity does already work. Only he who now allows, that is, keeps at bay, withholds, will allow to a certain point until he be taken out of the way. Here's where we are living. What is God the Holy Spirit doing with this? Well, in order for him to stay on the time schedule for God, in order for the rapture to be at a certain time, he has got to begin to take away his withholding powers. That's exactly what's happening. so that the mindset, the philosophy, the policies of the beast and of the kings ruling over the kingdom of the beast and the whole world following after the beast and worshiping him and wandering after him because he's so amazing. He can destroy whole markets and he can cause his own market to grow and to prosper. All of that has got to happen and be in place pretty much when the rapture happens, so that once it happens, then something else of great import can happen. Except, this is verse number 3 of 2 Thessalonians 2, except there come, and again, we have pointed this out 100 times, it is not a falling away. It has the definite article there, which distinguishes the word apostasia as the one and only departure. And the one in context is, verse 1, our gathering together unto him. That has to happen first. And of course, that's why we are pre-tribulationists here. And that's what we're going to discuss next Wednesday as to why it's important to distinguish this, why we cannot be mid-trib, or pre-wrath, or post-trib with regard to the rapture. It has to be pre-trib. Why? Because the man of sin has to be revealed, set up over the 10 kingdoms, and be ready to sign the peace pact with Israel, and he cannot be revealed until after the church is gone. Then it says, that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. Now, all of these things, as we bring this to a close, therefore must be in place. So, next time you think that there are people in the leadership of corporation, now, it's not everybody. This is not everybody. But it is the global mindset of rod of iron rule and looking at the world and saying, well, there are billions of people out there. Labor is cheap, and you become a speck of dust. And that is the first thing. The second thing is the exaltation of Western Europe and its policies. That's going to happen as the beast begins to devour. The leadership there comes through 10 kings and one king especially whose policies cause craft to prosper and destroys other world markets. And again, the mark of the beast and wages, food, are means of controlling people so that they have to live more or less from hand to mouth each and every day, dependent upon the government to make sure they're going to be alive for tomorrow. Those things must be in place, and we have about 15 years to this point after the rapture. Then the only thing that needs to be done is Antichrist revealed, placed over Western Europe, and the rest of the dispensation of law acted out.